Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today, I can't tell you how excited I am to announce our very special guest for today, Pam Scamardo. Pam, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, totally. I can't wait to share your story with the listeners. So, everyone, Pam took an unconventional jump into multifamily investing. She graduated with a master's in aerospace engineering and worked as an aeronautical engineer at Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and United Technologies for over 10 years. So, there's a lot more to that story, which I can't wait to get into. Pam, why don't you tell us where you went from there, being an engineer for however many decades and into real estate?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on. And so this is my story. I was at that time single, didn't have a family yet, just really young, fresh out of college for a couple of years. And I thought I would work as an engineer and just kind of progress, the corporate ladder and retire, like what we expect of normal people working in corporate America. However, what ended up happening is that as I grew to manage more teams, especially global teams, I worked with teams in India, Singapore, and in France. I had to wake up at certain time zones. And so my hours started to become from 8-hour days to 14, maybe 16-hour days. And I started thinking to myself in my cubicle with my 3 screens,
Mhm.
I was like, what am I going to do with my life if I really wanted to have a family? Am I
Mhm.
ever going to see them? Will I be at work before the kids wake up? And will I get back home from work when the kids are basically asleep? That was not the life I wanted to have. And so back then, when Borders bookstore was still around, I used to go every weekend and just kind of research like the investment section.
Uh-huh.
It was mostly on stocks and mutual bonds. And I thought, ugh, none of them really stood out to me.
Mhm.
And there was one book that really stood out to me, and it was called Commercial Real Estate Investing for Dummies. And I thought, well, hey, I'm a dummy in this area. Let's read this. What is
Uh-huh.
this all about?
Yeah.
And honestly, that's what changed the course of my path. I read the book from cover to cover, loved it so much, and fell in love with the multifamily asset because I've grown up living in apartments. And I thought, you know what? I could be a better landlord. There are slumlords out there. Why not make a difference?
Mhm.
So that was where my journey started. And I took it further and I chased down one of the authors who became my mentor. I asked him to become my mentor. And so he was very instrumental in helping me secure my first deal. And then since then, I've been buying on my own, and I was able to quit my full time job in 2 years from the passive income in apartment investing. And so, what was key there for me
Wait, real
was
quick.
just,
So I
yes,
just want to so at what point in your career, your engineering career, were you when you started reading this book?
at what point? So let me think back. I was managing teams array. So I had been, gosh, for at least 10 years
Uh-huh. Okay.
as an engineer. So worked my way up as an individual contributor.
Yeah, okay, that's awesome. Yeah, and I mean, just a quick plug for the dummies books. I mean, those books have helped so many people in different phases of their life. I just have to confess that one time I actually checked out the book Dating for Dummies.
No
I
way.
did, yeah. And it was I was just at a like frustrating point in my dating life, and it was really helpful. So, anyways, yeah, so that's awesome that there's so much in that story there, like you found this book and you ended up tracking down the author and somehow getting them to be your mentor. What was that like? How did that work? Because a lot of people are looking for mentors these days.
Yes, so I think it was a bit of luck and timing. I shared my story with him. I told him what my goals were, and what really spoke out to me was that he used to be a fellow engineer as well, like meaning he used to be an engineer and then turned multifamily investor. And so that's how it all worked out. And I guess I convinced him. He worked with me for my first deal, but I think what's important is that drive, and he saw that. And
Mhm.
a lot of people want something, but they need to also check with their drive and their internal drive. And for me, I wanted to become job optional. And I think that's very important. We all talk about financial freedom, financial independence, and whatnot, but how do we get there, right? And
Yeah.
so that's what's going to make you explore, learn and invest in yourself, and spend that extra time. So I remember every waking moment, if it wasn't for working with like my engineering job during my breaks, during my lunch breaks at night, I was researching and reading everything that was dealing with multifamily and working towards getting that first deal.
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, that's such a good point that you make about wanting something versus really having the drive to get there. There is like a difference between just actually wanting something and taking the steps necessary to get there and pursuing it kind of like at no matter what happens along the way. So that's awesome that your mentor saw that in you and that they helped you bring your first deal. I know I interrupted your story, so can you just keep going with where you left off?
I totally forgot where I left off, in all
um,
honesty.
okay, well, like,
So
let me ask you this then. So, a lot of people like to know, how did you find that first deal and what did it look like? And then, and we'll go from there.
sure. So the first deal, I always recommend this to people, is to look in your backyard. And I know a lot of people will say, well, it's so saturated, overpriced, but you really learn so much on your first deal, and you want to be able to drive there. And you want to be able to do what I call almost like surprise visits, just to see how the property is going along, whether you choose to manage it yourself or if you hire a property management company. It's just nice to kind of like solve and fix your business problems locally before you jump out of state or jump elsewhere. It's almost like leveling up, if you will, like playing video games, right? You want to start off at a certain level. You don't want to be all the way, like trying to run a marathon when you've never trained a day in your life. So
Yeah.
that's what I highly recommend. Was I started in my backyard. And back then I was living in San Diego. So as you can probably imagine, it was really hard to find a deal, but I kept looking. Looked at so many deals. There are a lot of mediocre deals out there, but you have to just, motivate yourself, keep yourself laser focused, right? To find the deal that works for you and your investors.
Mhm.
Don't
For
settle.
sure. Yeah, that's awesome. And were you looking for a specific unit type or count?
So for my first one, what I learned that with multifamily, to be on the commercial real estate side, you need to have 5 units or more, and the lending terms are different. So my goal was like, if I can find a 5 unit, great. But let's be honest, it's really not that common. You'll get 4 units and then it jumps up to other random numbers. So the closest number I got was 6 units, which I was thankful for. So I didn't have like a specific, like I needed to land a certain number, but I just wanted something that was 5 units and above. And I wasn't going for like 30 units or anything. I just wanted to stay in that smaller range so that if I needed to learn how to do something, it was still manageable in my own mindset. And what I came to learn, honestly, is 90% is your mindset. I could have gone further. I could have thought bigger, but I didn't. And that's okay. We're
Mhm.
still, everyone starts somewhere. That's what I always tell people. It's okay to start somewhere, even if it's small.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that's such a good point because it's not where you start, it's whether you keep going, and
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people will stop. I mean, I stopped after my first deal. I took a big break from investing, and if I had just kept going, I would be in a different place, but that's okay. We all have our own stories. So
Right.
yeah. So okay, so that's great. And I know you left your job within 2 years, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's awesome. And would love to
Thank
hear
you.
kind of a little bit of the logistics of how that worked in terms of, like, did you replace your income? What was your goal? How did you know you were ready to leave?
Yes. So it's definitely scary to step away from a cush job, if you will, at an engineering salary. The numbers were nice, but for me, it took 3 properties, and it took a couple partners in each property as well. So that's something I guess let me take a step back and share, is that a lot of people want to go into it all by themselves, and I think people need to realize that multifamily investing is a team sport. So you need to work together. And if you work together and your partner is going to be successful, guess what? You're going to be successful too in that group, right? So it's like a win-win situation. So the more people you can bring in to help one another out, the better your outcome will be. And so that's what was really instrumental in helping me to be able to become job optional in just like 2 years. So I had 3 properties under my belt. And by year 2, I was able to cash out my partners on the first deal. So that was really helpful in getting a chunk of cash to be able to deploy the capital into a new property. So that was kind of the plan, was to be a good steward of my investors' capital while
Yeah.
also meticulously growing. Um, and
And
yeah,
and
I'm
so
sorry.
just a quick question to circle back on a point that you made, which was that you used the proceeds from sale to put into a new property. what were you using to replace your income, or did you have savings and financial runway? How did that aspect work?
Okay. So I refinanced and cashed out. So I didn't sell the first property.
Okay.
And so all the income, the passive income, sorry, the passive income that was coming in was actually replacing my earned income slowly. So with the first property, I was making what, maybe only a couple hundred a month. And I knew that my spending habit or just my basic expenses was way higher than that. But that's how you grow it. I think that's a beautiful part about multifamily investing and why I have like such, I love it so much is because you can actually internally grow the money. So we would stabilize the property, raise rents, and bring in more rental income, which means more of a profit margin for all of the investors involved, right? And in doing so, that would increase my own passive income takeaway. And so that's how I was able to do it. So when I put in my money initially on the deal, because I always have skin in all my deals, to replace that portion was coming from the passive income of the rental income money. And then when I refi cashed out, fully supplemented or like paid all myself back of what I was, what I was down with. But that's the beautiful part about it. And then I still have that property to this day. So now I have an infinite return on it because I don't have any cash on that property anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I have a mortgage, none of my money's sitting in it.
Okay. So you were basically able to do the Burr method with this property, which was how many units again?
I started off with 6 units.
With 6 units. Okay. So you're able to do, would you characterize it as doing the Burr method?
Actually, I was going to ask you, what is the Burr method?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the Burr method is something that, they buy, rehab, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat.
Oh,
and so basically you're able to take out your initial capital and then put it into another deal. So, yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, that's really great. And then those first 3 deals, how many units did they total? And were they all in San Diego?
They were not all in San Diego. The first was in San Diego. Then I decided to jump out of state. So between those 3, I'm adding them up now, total to just under 20 units.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. I mean, well, that's pretty incredible to see how those numbers, to see that you were able to do that. And obviously, you're going to continue to grow. And what would you say is ahead for you? Like, what are you focused on now? What are you working towards?
My business goals? Yeah. My plan is to syndicate 100 units. And so we're actively looking. And aside from that, my other goal is to actually start teaching folks multifamily investing basics. So I'm in Orange County or just moved out here. So my plan is starting this October is I'm going to launch my first class on that, just teaching people like, how did I analyze my first deal? I'll go through all the numbers, on my 6-unit deal that we've been talking at length about here. And that's the plan, is just to help keep educating others, empowering others, because I know a lot of people just want to jump in, whether they want to be the operators themselves, or maybe they want to truly be passive and just let someone else handle it for them. That's totally fine too. But we might as well start thinking about creative ways to retire early and live life by our own design, right?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. Well, that's awesome that you're starting a class. And I think there is a huge interest in learning the space. And I know you're going to serve an amazing, your audience is going to grow, and you're going to love teaching. So that's awesome. I would be curious. Yeah. Excited for you. I'm curious to know if there's any lessons you want to share from any of the deals that you've done so far. I'm sure there's many.
Yes. One that comes to mind is if you're going to jump into this is my own opinion, is just go into the commercial side. You'll hear that for multifamily, some people play in the residential side and then might want to convert over. If you are thinking of doing it, go ahead and do that. And then don't look back. My biggest mistake I did was I ended up buying a 4-unit after I'd been purchasing commercial units, and the amount of work was the same. And so, for example, for the 4-unit, if I was 1 unit down, I was already losing 25% of the income, which is a lot compared to like if I was managing 6 units or 10 units or 20 units, right? So that was the biggest lesson learned for me.
For sure. Yeah. It's kind of an interesting balancing act now that you mention it, because, you want to be able to take on the correct, like a good amount of risk and not too much risk, and leverage. But yeah, like jumping into the commercial space it's the economies of scale that you can achieve with commercial is so important. How did you meet your partners, Pam?
Well, they all started out being my friends and family. So on my first deal, they were my engineering coworkers. And through time, it's by word of mouth. And now, when we syndicate, it's just about anyone. So it takes time. And I think a lot of people ask of how to find the right people when they're raising capital and whatnot. You start off with your friends and family. That's what everyone does. And then you grow from there with time, because by then you'll develop a track record. And then your friends and family who have enjoyed working with you, they'll help spread the word as well. And then you meet people where you do business with, meaning like I've met some of my investors from my yoga class. I was not going into it I was trying to focus on me, my time on the yoga mat. And then we just,
Yeah,
like we connected, we would hang out, have coffee, then over time, like it just happened. So that's the beautiful part about it.
for sure. Yeah, it does take time, and it does build over time if you stick with it. What are any of your friends and family, like, how do they, are they interested in doing what you're doing, like leaving their corporate careers to be real estate investors? Are you seeing people get inspired around you to do what you're doing?
Yeah, I get a mix actually. So I have some folks who are more younger, who are more eager they want to try to be their own operators. But then some of my clients who are, I want to say, like closer to the typical retirement age, late 50s and whatnot, they're okay. They want to let our team do what we do, and they just reap the benefits. So I'd say there's a mix, yeah, of
For sure.
people.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think you'll ever go back to engineering, or do you just love real estate so much? Like, what do you see in your future?
I love this so much because I wouldn't exchange it for, like, I have time to go to Disneyland with my kids, which if you guys read my website or find me on Instagram, that's all I really do. Honestly, I love going to Disneyland with my kids, but I love being around
Yeah.
home. And we love traveling when we can travel safely. So I don't think I will go back, as much as I miss some of the technical stuff that I was so happy to have worked on, or like just to see some of the projects come to fruition. I think I wouldn't trade that time again, because I was working such long hours and I wouldn't be able to have time to be with my kids and my family. So,
For
so this
sure.
is it. I'll
Yeah.
continue with this.
Yeah. What do you recommend for people who want to, maybe transition out of their career, but and want to invest in real estate passively, but aren't interested in the active operations? Like, what advice might you have for them?
Sure. So find someone or a team, or a group that you've vetted that kind of has similar values to what you have, meaning, they're serving the people that are similar to yourself. So an example would be, let's just say you're a college graduate, right? So you're new to the workforce, you're excited to maybe like work in corporate America a little bit while you're growing this hustle money on the side. Well, you want to work with a team that probably specializes in trying to serve that part of what you're wanting. And so the key that I'm trying to get at here is that when you're dealing with money, you're dealing with trusting someone. And at the end of the day, it's really a relationship business. So you got to trust that gut of yours. They call it the gut feeling, your intuition. So, obviously do your research, vet the team, vet the business, vet the company that you may be considering investing in, but also trust that gut feeling as well. Is it telling you, yes, go for it, or no, don't? Or is there any, uncertainty? And to me, if there's any uncertainty, then maybe don't. But always try to work with someone who's been in the business a while, right? So someone who's been in business for over 10 years and doing this, you probably have a better chance of getting the return on your money versus just starting off. And that's okay. You can always start off by working with someone together, but in regards to talking about truly passive income investing, then that's what I would recommend, is find someone who's been seasoned in the industry for a while, and then that you find trustworthy and you actually, can relate to one another.
For sure. Yeah. It's really important to focus on the who, not the how. Sometimes, like, this is a relationship business, and having that trust is
Hmm.
critical, not just necessarily the fancy brochures or whatnot, but someone who, you trust in your gut. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you so much, Pam, for coming on and sharing a bit about your story and what you've learned so far. I would love to, if you wouldn't mind sharing how the listeners can learn more about you and anything else you want to share.
No problem. And thanks for having me on. So if you guys want to reach out to me, you can go to my website at letsgocreatewealth.com, literally spelled like it is, letsgocreatewealth.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn or connect with me on my Instagram. I just started. It's Apartment Pam. That's my handle. So would love to connect with you guys on there as well.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys check out Pam's stuff. She clearly has a lot going for her and a lot of interesting content coming out. Pam, thank you so much for coming on. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me.